Toothless, Scene 2, The Junkyard, Part 3. The rushing wind and his thumping heart filled the doctor's ears as he bolted through the junkyard. He sprinted through pale light columns and past stacks of dead cars. He continued to run at full speed until he rounded a large car stack and saw where the yellow light came from. Franklin stopped running as he tried to process the sight before him. An old stone wall with a rusty light fixture sticking out high above shined a sickly yellow light. The yellow light created a finely delineated circle on the ground that prevented the darkness from penetrating. In that circle were small tufts of grass, sporadically growing in patches amongst the dusty dirt. Also, in the dirt and grass tufts sat a man slumped against the wall. He was beaten and bloodied. He wore a dark uniform and jolted back in fear as Franklin approached. Both men studied each other briefly, attempting to ascertain why the other was in this forsaken junkyard. "You're an EMT," Franklin surmised as he approached. The grime and blood made it difficult to recognize the uniform at first, yet his work as a doctor provided a natural familiarization with the medical insignias and patches on the man's shirt. This person wore the uniform of an emergency medical technician. The medic nodded, wincing with pain from the simple movement. "How did you get here?" asked Franklin. The EMT shrugged. "I don't know." His voice was hoarse and weak. "What happened to you?" The EMT frowned deeply and shook his head with small, painful movements. "The dentist." Franklin could see that it wasn't only pain that made it difficult for the EMT to speak of the dentist. It was trauma-induced fear. The doctor made a mental note to not bring the EMT near the dentist if possible. "Do you know how to get out of here?" The medic motioned to his left. Dr. Meadowlark mentally kicked himself for not seeing it sooner. It blended in so well and matched the wall's texture, but no doubt there was a door. The door was large, metallic, and directly under the tarnished yellow light fixture. Like everything else in this haunted junkyard, the door was old and rusted, yet it looked sturdy and thick. I don't know why," the medic said, pausing for a ragged breath. "The dentist stays away from this door. I don't think he can go through there. So, I think it's the way out." Franklin nodded in acknowledgement. "I will be right back." Franklin leaned in to assure the EMT. "I need to grab the others." The sound of a gunshot rang out in the distance. Franklin had only seen one person with a firearm around here. He turned and ran towards the sound, hoping to find the security guard, cowboy, whatever. As he ran, the whirring of the dentist's drill could be heard, followed by a blood-curdling scream. Gremlin, tackle, versus Curly, heel kick, +1 modifier. 2 versus 7. Curly demonstrates exceptional success, +1 modifier to next action. Curly kicked the semi-blind, charging gremlin into the car stack next to him. The gremlin's oblong head went through a car's decrepit grill, causing the monster's head to become stuck. The gremlin went into a frenzy, trying to free its head from the old car. Curly ignored the plight of the gremlin and looked around the car stack at the dentist. "Hey, cowboy!" Franklin called out from behind as he ran toward Curly. "What's up, Doc?" Curly spared a glance at the frenetic, trapped little monster before turning to face Franklin. "I found a way out. Come on." The cowboy looked back at the dental nightmare in the center of the junkyard. His jaw clenched and mouth twisted at the sight of the sockeye little man, bloodied and dangling off the dentist's hook. "What about the rest?" Curly asked without looking back at Franklin. "I would love to tell everybody, but I'm not going near that dentist right now," answered Franklin. "Also, I don't see the magician." The security guard stomped angrily in a small circle, despising the doctor's recommendation. There was still a chance to protect, to save. By pistol standards, the shot was far and not an easy one to make. Curly sneered, disregarding this knowledge, and aimed his pistol. "Hey, Toothless!" Curly yelled across the distance. Both Albert and the dentist turned to look at the cowboy. Albrecht sputtered and cried out a bloody rejection as newfound fear came from the pistol aimed in his direction. The mortician's cries did not matter. Curly pulled the trigger, and the bullet flew through the gunpowder smoke as the gunshot rang from its barrel. The round pierced through the air as it sped for its target. Albrecht clung to the dentist's arm and squeezed his eyes shut, hoping he would be able to open them again. Curly, quick draw, versus dentist, predictive movement. 6 versus 10. Curly fails. Missed! Curly stomped angrily. Albrecht's eyes burst wide open upon hearing Curly's voice. He was still alive. Albrecht was still hanging by the cheek of this nightmare hook, but he was alive. The pain returned as the dentist lifted Albrecht again. The possibility that the bullet may have been a mercy shot crossed the mortician's mind for a brief moment. The cowboy turned and glared down at Franklin. "We're not leaving!" Dr. Meadowlark felt the weight of Curly's glaring words. He sighed heavily and looked down. Franklin dug deep inside his soul, searching for something to help renew his vigor and commitment to the group. Hoping he had uncovered that hidden courage, he looked up, nodded in affirmation to Curly, then grabbed the first thing he could find to throw at the dentist. Franklin, stamina, versus Gremlin, dodge. 1 versus 3. Franklin fails. Franklin yanked hard at the gremlin's feet and extricated its head from the broken grill. However, he underestimated the effort needed to perform this action, and Franklin fell backward as the gremlin came free from the car. The doctor rolled about in the dirt, trying to hold on to the gremlin's feet, but the frantic monster escaped his grasp. The gremlin barked and growled, then scurried into a dark shadow of the car stack and disappeared. Curly looked questioningly at the doctor, who was still supine on the ground, covered in dust. "I was going to throw it at the dentist." The doctor started to explain, but stopped when he saw Curly's face. "I saw it going better in my head." The one-sided conversation was suddenly interrupted by a new scream. Curly and Franklin peered around their stack and saw Bizarria the Magi charging toward the dentist from the other side of the junkyard. The Magi screamed as she ran at the nightmare, throwing knives from both sides of her jacket. The confused dentist turned to face the charging magician and met 2 knives flying toward his head. Bizarria, throwing knives, versus dentist, predictive movement. 6 versus 6. Bizarria fails. The nightmare extended his long, slender arm, allowing the knives to fly between its head and Albrecht's. With the dentist extending awkwardly away from the knives, Albrecht took the opportunity to attempt another escape. Albrecht, intelligent dodge, versus dentist, hook. 8 versus 7. Albrecht succeeds. Albrecht's arms trembled as he struggled to raise his face over the hook's tip. Through determination, he twisted his head and pulled upward. Then, the tension in his cheek was gone. Strength left his arms, and the mortician collapsed to the ground. Albrecht was free. "Oh, my!" Albrecht slurred wetly as his head spun. "Oh, my gosh!" The mortician stumbled to his feet and staggered in a feeble attempt to escape while keeping one hand over the bleeding hole in his face. "I knew you could do it!" Franklin called out as he sprinted toward the mortician. The dentist looked at his hook, then at Albrecht. Albrecht stumbled and nearly fell as he looked back at the nightmare. The dentist swept its hook wide as he attempted to catch its patient again. Dentist hook versus teamwork roll. Franklin, stamina, 2. Albrecht, intelligent dodge, 7. Teamwork succeeds. The dentist's arm extended further than Albrecht anticipated. It was a slow-motion movement as the mortician continued stumbling backward and saw the hook sweep inches from his face. Real time kicked in fast and hard as Albrecht was suddenly yanked off his feet and pulled further away from the hook. Franklin had grabbed and tossed the mortician behind him, placing himself between the nightmare dentist and the mortician. Albrecht cried out excitedly as he realized he hadn't been hooked and quickly staggered away from the dentist. His cry of excitement abruptly changed to one of anxiety when he realized Franklin was now behind him and in the path of the dentist. You came out and risked yourself for me? Albrecht asked as he halted his escape. Now I feel bad for running. Franklin chuckled at their predicament. You just gotta do it, man. Franklin shrugged. Go to the medic. Run! Where do I go? The hole in Albrecht's cheek made it more complicated than usual to decipher what he said, but the hand motions and lost look in his eyes helped translate the question. Franklin pointed with both hands toward the yellow light. Go! Albrecht nodded and ran as best as he could. Dr. Meadowlark turned around to see the shining spectacles of the dentist focused on him. Franklin bounced lightly off the balls of his feet, fully facing the dentist and concentrating on controlled breathing. Despite the nightmare's wide smile remaining unchanged, he seemed to question the interaction that just took place. The dentist's head and long body tilted to the side as if in question, but he did not wait for an answer. The nightmare moved swiftly from his semi-crouched position and stabbed at Franklin with his drill. Dentist drill versus Franklin outrun. 5 versus 6. Franklin succeeds. Franklin injected pure force of will and spirit into his legs and heart. The doctor was in full-on sprint, racing against a nightmare that threatened his life. He dashed back toward the car stack where Curly stood ready with his pistol sights on the dentist. "Follow me!" Franklin yelled as loud as he could while running past the security guard. "Forget the dentist! I know the way out! Get to the door!" Franklin reached the rusty metal door at record speed. No one else was here, and he did not wait for them. Dr. Meadowlark grabbed the injured medic, twisted the handle, pulled, and threw in the EMT. However, the handle broke off when Franklin pulled, and the EMT collided hard into the closed metal door. Franklin stood looking at the broken, rusted handle in one hand and the crying medic on the ground. The doctor's countenance dropped in bafflement as he tried to understand what just happened. "Oops," Franklin muttered, still looking at the handle. "Why?" the medic cried out in agony, holding his face with both hands. "I didn't know." Franklin stammered and apologized profusely. "I'm sorry. I can't take it back." The medical examiner tossed the rusty handle to the ground and turned to look over the door. "Franklin, quick ID. 2. Success. Easy DT." "I thought the medic was the key for getting into the door." Albrecht hobbled into the yellow light with Bizarria close behind. "Wait, the medic's the key?" questioned Dr. Meadowlark. "From what I understand, yeah." "How is the medic the key?" "The system always places a key near the lock," Albrecht explained. "He's next to the lock, so he must be the key." "Well, throwing him into the door didn't open it." "Maybe it's a metaphor," Curly suggested as he approached. Franklin propped up the EMT and knelt beside him. The medic dropped one hand, revealing half of his dirty, tear-stricken face. Franklin cringed slightly as he noticed more than one tooth missing from the EMT's mouth. "Hold on. I know how to open it." The medic mumbled and wearily waved his hand. "Hold on." Slowly, weakly, the medic got up and shuffled to the door with Franklin's assistance. "Hurry!" Bizarria looked back anxiously at the pale streetlights. "The dentist is coming!" The medic moved slowly, painfully, working a hidden lock in the old door. The dentist hissed loudly through the junkyard. "Albrecht!" The nightmare's voice seemed to linger in the air longer than it should. A loud mechanical whir of the drill resounded. Closer. Closer. "Go away!" Albrecht yelled back. "I don't need another appointment!" One by one, pale white lights popped and extinguished, like teeth being pulled from the darkness as the dentist continued to move closer. "We're not done." The nightmare slowly stepped into view as he rounded a distant car stack. "I have your teeth, but your mouth is not yet ready." Albrecht held his head and vigorously shook it back and forth, whining in contradiction of the dentist's claim. The medic moved spastically as the dentist closed in. The combination lock was unique and complex, Parts were hidden in the dust or worn away. Still, somehow, the medic knew what to do. Curly's mustache exploded with anxiety. Despite the distraction under his nose, he focused both of his six-shooters on the dentist. Something metallic popped inside the door. Gears, once frozen with prolonged unuse, began to grind and turn. Dust shook off the door as it became ajar. Franklin and the medic heaved and pulled open the heavy old door. The dentist began to run, his drill turning loudly, Hook flashing sparks against a nearby car. His smile glistened white in the yellow light. Teamwork roll. Franklin, outrun, 5. Albrecht, intelligent dodge, 3. Bizarria, dexterity, 3. Curly, dexterity, 2. Teamwork succeeds. Dive! 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 Albrecht yelled as he dove through the doorway, Bizarria fast behind him. Curly was walking backward, keeping his sights trained on the dentist, when he tripped on the ledge of the doorway. Franklin leaped to grab the cowboy, and they both fell into the tunnel. The heavy metal door groaned loudly and slammed shut. Old inner working gears creaked as they spun and clicked loudly, locking the door. A terrible muffled scream could be heard on the other side of the locked door, bringing a horrible realization to the group. The medic had closed the door and locked the dentist out. A deep thud sounded against the door. The muffled screams stopped. All was quiet and dark except for a faint hiss that pierced through the silence. Albrecht!